This buttery flaky pie crust is perfect for any kind of pie. We are using cold butter because it has the best flavor. You'll need 227 grams, or 1 cup, which is about half a pound. Slice the butter into small cubes, about 1 centimeter in size. While you're preparing the other ingredients, freeze the cubes for about 5 minutes. Measure out 313 grams of all-purpose flour. This is about 2½ cups. Some people use pastry flour instead of all-purpose flour, but that's too specialized for us. It's not necessary. You get a similar result when you sift all-purpose flour, but you really should sift it. Add a ½ teaspoon of table salt and mix well. Now add the cold cubes of butter directly from the freezer. Break them apart with your fingers. Mix a little to coat the butter with flour. Now press the butter with your fingers a little at a time, like this, until you've done this with all the butter. It won't take long, just a minute or two. After doing this, you'll have a crumbly mixture of flour with small pea-sized lumps of butter, like this. Now add ice cubes to a small bowl of water. To get the right texture for your pie crust, it's very important that the butter and water be cold. When the water is very cold, add 3 tablespoons and mix with your hands. You want the dough to just barely hold together, without being too sticky. Until the dough holds together, add more cold water, 1 tablespoon at a time. You'll get the right texture eventually. If you accidentally add too much water, you can add a little flour. When you get a texture like this, transfer to your countertop and press together to form a rough ball. Pat down the ball to make a disc and cut in half. Make each half into a ball. Then pat down to form a disc. You'll use 1 disc for your pie. The other can be for a second pie or for decorations for the top of your pie. Wrap the discs so that there is no air inside. Then refrigerate for at least an hour. If you leave the dough in the fridge for longer than an hour, then you need to let it sit at room temperature for at least an hour afterwards. Otherwise, it will be too hard to work with.
You see? It's too hard.
We're using a 9-inch pie plate. Grease the plate with melted butter. Sprinkle some flour on the bottom, then shake it to distribute the flour into a thin layer. Pour out any excess flour and distribute it on the counter, adding a little if you need to. It's time to work the dough. Place the disc on the counter, then flip and add flour to the top of the disc so that both sides are covered. Pat down to flatten, then add some flour to your rolling pin. If you don't have a rolling pin, you can use a wine bottle. Roll upwards, then flip the dough around and roll upwards again. This is to form a circle that will line the inside of your pie plate. Sprinkle more flour, then roll again to prevent the dough from sticking. In our case, we're aiming for a 12-inch circle about 3 to 4 millimeters thick, since our plate is 9 inches. Fold the top of the circle down over the bottom and let go. Don't press down. Fold across, then gently place in the pie plate. The corner should be placed in the center of the pie plate. Now gently unfold the crust. This is where it gets really fun. Don't worry if it breaks. You can patch it up. As gently as you can, fit the circle so it lines the pie dish without pulling too hard on the dough. Now press in firmly but gently. Now this pie gets a haircut. Trim along the edges, leaving about a ½ inch hanging over the side. Now it's time to put your puzzle skills to work. Take the trimmings from the side and use them to fill any gaps along the edge or any rips inside. With your thumbs, tuck the dough under bit by bit until you've done the whole pie. Now let's make it pretty and add some ruffles, like this. It only takes a minute, but it makes your pie a work of art. Pierce the bottom of the crust with a fork to prevent air bubbles from forming when the pie bakes. Freeze the crust for at least an hour. Preheat the oven to 425 degrees Fahrenheit. We are going to blind bake the crust. This step is very important. It's to maintain the structure of the pie crust once the filling is added. Crumple the piece of paper first, as it makes it easier to maneuver it to line the crust. Do this right away while the crust is still frozen. Now we add a piece of aluminum foil on top of the parchment paper. This is to ensure the walls of the pie keep their shape. Now add dried beans. We have a stash of yellow peas that we only use for blind baking. Bake for 15 minutes. While the crust is blind baking, make an egg wash. Whisk an egg, then add a teaspoon of water and mix again. Take out the crust and remove the beans and lining. The crust isn't completely cooked yet, but the shape is set. If you find our video helpful, please help us by liking it and subscribing to our channel. Now we do an egg wash to seal the surface of the pie shell and to give the crust a nice golden color. Spread the egg evenly over the crust with a brush. Reduce the oven temperature to 350 degrees Fahrenheit and put in the pie crust. Bake for 10 to 15 minutes or until the crust is golden. Store your dried beans for the next time you need them. The pie crust is perfect, ready for whatever filling you want to add. This crust works for sweet pies, but it's also perfect for savory pies and quiches. We hope you enjoyed our video. If you did, we think you'll like this one too.